From Vermont Public, this is The Frequency. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. It's Wednesday, July 23rd, and here are today's headlines. U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders held a rare in-person press conference in Burlington on Monday. Sanders says the budget package approved by Congress earlier this month is, quote, the most destructive legislation in modern American history. The state senior senator says 45,000 Vermonters will lose health coverage as a result of Medicaid cuts in President Trump's recently passed federal budget bill. And he says he's begun working with Senate colleagues on spending legislation that could at least partially offset reductions to hospitals, nursing homes, and federally qualified health centers.
I mean, essentially what we're going to try to do in a piecemeal fashion, as best as we can, is to undo the damage of that legislation.
Sanders says the longer-term strategy to reverse Trump's agenda is electoral, and he says he'll be traveling the country to stump for Democratic House candidates in the run-up to next year's midterms. A Ugandan asylee living in Colchester was allowed to return to his Vermont home Monday after checking in with Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials in St. Albans. Pastor Stephen Tendo told Vermont Public that a deportation notice to his home country would be akin to sending him to his grave. Tendo is expected to meet with ICE agents again in October, that according to NBC5. The pastor has a pending case for U.S. citizenship. St. Michael's College is using a $240,000 grant to create a new emergency service program. A private family foundation donated the money to support the college's work in emergency medical services and its student-run St. Michael's Fire and Rescue. The new program will offer several degrees and certifications and expand current partnerships with regional EMS providers, that according to Vermont Business Magazine. The college introduced majors in health science and public health in 2018. And a new book documents the explosion of jam band music in the 1990s and how Vermont bands and concerts played a role. Sharing in the Groove is an oral history book by music journalist and author Mike Ayers. Yesterday, on Vermont Edition, he said many fans, himself included, saw Vermont as a mecca for the freewheeling counterculture music they loved.
Everybody is, saying you got to hear this band, Phish. They are from Burlington, right? It starts to stamp that town, your city, into that, into the consciousness of the subculture.
Ayers will discuss his book at Phoenix Books in Burlington, July 28th, and at Northshire Books in Manchester on July 29th. And coming up, we have more on how music has the power to bring people together, as we remember a radio host whose folk and world music show was for nearly 3 decades appointment listening for thousands in Vermont and beyond. Vermont Public's Nina Keck remembers the life and legacy of All the Traditions host Robert Resnik, who passed away this week. That's after this.
Thanks for listening to The Frequency, where support comes from Alpine Telehealth, offering telepsychiatry solutions for Vermont hospital, community mental health, and primary care. Physician-owned and operated since 2018. Learn more at alpinetelehealth.com.
For almost 30 years, our friend and colleague Robert Resnik brought us a weekly smorgasbord of music. His beloved Sunday evening program, All the Traditions, let us sample instruments and musical styles from every part of the world, including our own backyard. Robert passed away on Monday with his family by his side. He was 72. Vermont Public's Nina Keck has this tribute.
When Robert Resnik sat down at the microphone to share his Sunday night playlist, it felt like he was at your kitchen table. You might hear a collection of blues, Ethiopian harp music, or Cuban folk. Resnik played it all.
You heard the big names that you already knew about, but you discovered a lot of people that you didn't know about and lived right down the road from you.
Betty Smith is one of the few people who've worked at Vermont Public longer than Resnik. She can picture him in the studio with his headphones on, his eyes closed, and a smile spreading across his face.
Tapping his foot, just kind of feeling it down to his toes. He had a sort of a twinkle about him, and he had an enthusiasm that was infectious. And, when he opened his eyes, he might give you a wink.
Well, you're listening to All the Traditions on Vermont Public Radio, and Robert Resnik here playing you all kinds of stuff. We heard Blind Lemon Jefferson doing one of his classics, Long Distance Moan. One of the things about the old kind of scratchy blues recordings is that after about 30 seconds, the sound quality ceases to matter because the guitar playing is so exquisite.
I find the Carolina. I got to go there this time.
In a 2022 interview with the Vermont Arts Council, Resnik said hosting all the traditions was a stroke of luck that felt like his personal mission.
I remember music is one of my earliest memories, singing around the house, and we used to sing in the car when we were driving around. I think when you talk about music and the emotions that are brought by something as elemental as beating of your heart, and how your memories go back beyond memory to music that somebody sang to you. And that's essentially what I'm doing on the radio. I'm doing show and tell in the broadest sense.
Besides showcasing others, Resnik was a talented musician in his own right. What you're listening to is from a 2012 album he recorded of favorite songs. Resnik grew up in a musical family in New Jersey, learned clarinet as a child, and gradually began adding more and more instruments to his quiver.
He could also play tin whistles and probably play a crumhorn, for all I know. Not to mention, bouzouki, mandolin, guitar, a concertina.
Vermont musician and longtime friend Mary McGinnis met Resnik when he was a student at UVM in the early 1970s. Besides his musical talent, she says he was incredibly kind, smart, and insatiably curious. He had a master's degree in library sciences, which he put to good use in Burlington for nearly 30 years.
Not only was he a librarian, people would walk into the Fletcher Free Library with bags of mushrooms to ask him to identify what they had found.
Resnik was as much an expert on foraging mushrooms as folk music, affirms Betty Smith.
He collected, and he categorized, and he learned about, and he studied, and he approached the whole folk music scene in the area with an observer's educated eye. I mean, he was good at that.
Resnik loved shining a light on other musicians and letting listeners know where they were performing. Before there was social media to tell you where to catch a great local act, to remind you of some old-time gem, or introduce you to something new, there was Resnik. His oldest son, Max, says hosting all the traditions was a labor of love for his dad.
Being a DJ and being able to share music, to share stories, to share food was one of the things that my dad loved more than anything else.
Robert Resnik's influence on the Vermont art scene was recognized in 2019 when he won the Herb Lockwood Prize. That same year, he spoke openly about having Parkinson's disease and the limits it was putting on his abilities. Nonetheless, he stayed behind the microphone and in 2023 was inducted into the Folk DJ Hall of Fame. Resnik is survived by his wife Maureen and his two sons Ben and Max. For Vermont Public, I'm Nina Keck.
The Resniks say there will be a service this Sunday at Ohavi Zedek Synagogue, with a larger celebration of life to be held at a later date. Thanks for listening to The Frequency today. We had additional reporting from Peter Hirschfeld, Jen Jarecki, Adia Golston, and Michaela Lafrac. Today's episode was edited by Stephanie Colombini, and our music is by Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Mitch Rutlieb. Talk to you tomorrow.